The Revolutionary War raid that you may have never heard of happened here in Charlestown, Massachusetts in 1776. And you won't believe how the Continentals did it. Immediately after the Battle of Bunker Hill in June of 1775, the British erected forts in Charlestown, including the Citadel, which stood right here on top of Bunker Hill itself. The Citadel was the largest fort built in Charlestown, with walls 10 feet thick. And it comprised a garrison of several hundred British troops. It is January 1776, and the Continentals encamped in nearby Cambridge under the command of General George Washington know that even though the British burnt the town of Charlestown to the ground during the Battle of Bunker Hill, the British are using the houses that survived the battle as guard houses and for firewood. And on the night of January 8th, 1776, the Continentals decide to do something about it. I hope you're wearing your adventure pants, everybody, because today we are off again on another historical action adventure. On the night of January 8th, 1776, many British officers and soldiers who are stationed here in Boston, across the Charles River from Charlestown, are gathered here at Faneuil Hall to watch a play. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, to watch a play? But Katie, what about the Act for Preventing Stage Plays and Other Theatrical Entertainments that the Massachusetts Great and General Court passed in 1750? You know, the one to prevent the great and many mischiefs that arise from public stage plays, interludes, and other theatrical entertainments that discourage industry and frugality. Wasn't that exactly what you were thinking? I know. It was illegal. Plays were illegal in Massachusetts in 1775. But that did not stop the British from taking the Boston Town Meeting House of Faneuil Hall and turning it into a theater. The play scheduled to have its big debut here on the night of the 8th at about 9 p.m. was written by British General John Burgoyne. And although no script for it exists today, it was intended to be a farce, to lampoon General George Washington and his Continentals. But it would be Washington and his men who get the last laugh. Hi everybody, it's me, Katie. Welcome back to my channel, where it is all Revolutionary War all the time. If you've been here before, then welcome back. I am so happy that you've chosen to join me again. And if this is your first time here, then welcome. My name is Katie, and I am a Revolutionary War researcher, writer, and speaker based in the Boston area. And on this channel, we venture out on historical action adventures. We visit battlefields, burying grounds, historic houses, and even bridges where events of the American Revolution actually happened. So if this sounds like fun to you, don't be afraid. Subscribe and come along. So the Continentals see the British using these houses that have survived the battle for their guard houses and for firewood, and they plan a raid to take the guards prisoner and destroy the houses. But how will they get from camp in Cambridge to here in Charlestown? The most obvious way, of course, would be to take the roadway that runs straight across Charlestown Neck. But don't forget about the citadel, the British fort standing on top of Bunker Hill. From here, the British can see everything. They have an absolutely commanding view of this area. Okay, so I'm going to show you. I'm going to take the camera. All right, now this is the view that the British would have seen from the top of Bunker Hill in the citadel, looking northwest. And as you can see, they can see for miles. Now, down here is the Sullivan Square Rotary today, but in 1775, this was Charlestown Neck. And you can see from our position here on top of the actual Bunker Hill itself, the British fort just loomed over the one roadway that came in and out of Charlestown. As you can see, nobody would have been able to enter Charlestown on this roadway and escape unnoticed. So the Continentals have to devise another way. For decades before and after 1776, there was a mill pond in Charlestown, which served to power mills, and also a mill dam in the Charles River, constructed of stones and pilings, which intriguingly ran in between Charlestown and Cambridge. So it provided a very unlikely yet incredibly direct connection between the Patriot or Continental Army's territory in Cambridge and beyond, and the territory that the British had seized after the Battle of Bunker Hill, the whole Charlestown Peninsula. And what lay at the end of the mill dam in Charlestown? The houses that the British were using. Major Thomas Knowlton of Connecticut, veteran of the Battle of Bunker Hill, is put in command of about 150 men. And their orders are to cross the mill dam. Cross the mill dam, take the guards prisoner, and burn the houses. So around 9 p.m. on January 8th, 1776, almost unbelievably, Major Knowlton and his men enter Charlestown the one and only way they can, by crossing the mill dam. And at the exact same moment as the Continentals are crossing the mill dam, the curtain is about to go up on the British play being put on here within the walls of Faneuil Hall. Just popping in here to say that if you're enjoying this video, then I hope you'll consider giving it a like. Clicking the like button tells YouTube that an audience finds a video to be of value, and it helps my channel spread to a bigger audience on YouTube, which will enable me to bring you more Revolutionary War stories, which is what I really want to do. So thank you all for considering it. Thank you for your support, and let's get back to Charlestown. Now, by the way, why am I in this field? Of all places. It's a good question. Remember how the houses were located somewhat at the base of Bunker Hill. That is Bunker Hill in the distance where the tall church steeple is. That is where the citadel stood on top of Bunker Hill. And the houses were located toward the west on the shore of the Charles River, somewhat south of Charlestown Neck. And like I often say, between all of the development and the landfill and a really busy 6-lane road where the Charles River shoreline used to be, things do change over the centuries. But this is the approximate spot where Major Knowlton and his men crossed the mill dam and where the houses stood. There is no trace of them today, but this is the approximate spot where everything happened. Clarification. I chose to film in the field because the field gives the best view of where I think the houses were and where Major Knowlton and his men came ashore. So I don't think the houses were standing in that field, but from that field, you could look over my shoulder just beyond that busy street that was running behind me and see about where I think Knowlton and his men were and where the houses stood. And also from the field, you can see Breeds Hill, Bunker Hill, Charlestown Neck in one direction, and then over my other shoulder was Cambridge. So I just wanted to clarify that. I don't think the event happened right there in those fields, but it gave the best view of where I do think it happened. So I just wanted to say that I'm gonna get back there. I'll see you down there. Major Knowlton and his men managed to cross undetected, and they split into 2 groups in order to burn about 14 houses. They successfully set several of them on fire, maybe as many as 10. They capture 4 British soldiers plus the wife of one of them. And 1 British soldier is killed during the raid. Back at Faneuil Hall, the great satire of Washington and the Continentals has begun. But it won't finish. Now, there are a few different accounts of what happened next, but according to some of them, just as the character intended to depict General George Washington appears on stage wearing a huge teetering wig and dragging a long, rusty sword behind him. Recall that this is supposed to be British General Burgoyne's great satire of Washington and the Continentals. Just as Washington appears, a British soldier races into the hall and up on the stage and yells, "The Yankees are attacking Bunker Hill!" And the audience thinks it's an act. They think it's part of the play. And so they break out into applause. And the British soldier is standing there on the stage, stunned and looking out at the audience. When finally, British General William Howe, who by this time is Commander-in-Chief of the British forces, leaps up out of his seat and yells, "To your alarm posts!" This caused a riot of activity to break out inside Faneuil Hall amongst the British officers, soldiers, and audience members. According to a 1776 London newspaper article, in the ensuing chaos and panic, people skipped over the orchestra and trampled on the fiddles. The Continentals in Cambridge watched as British troops in the citadel, fearful that they were being attacked, sprung into action. One unnamed eyewitness who was watching from Cambridge, probably a Continental officer or soldier, recalled that the British troops started firing at random in absolute confusion, some of them firing up into the air, others into the Mystic River, which, he said, gave no small pleasure to the watching Continentals. In the end, Major Knowlton and his men returned to Cambridge totally unscathed with their prisoners. And a different type of farce ended up being enacted here at Faneuil Hall. Now, if you are feeling emboldened and want to go out on another historical action adventure, I hope you'll check out this video where we climb a set of really scary stone steps and investigate the strange structure that stood on Lexington Green in 1775. Thank you all so much for coming along on the adventure, and I'll see you in the next video.